Hey guys, did you ever wonder what are the best options for VPN site-to-site tunnels, which are considered secure, which are considered fast as well? And I would like to go into this kind of question today with this session, which is a little different to the previous ones, because I want to try to engage more into the videos than just showing slideshows. So yeah, welcome to a new format at my channel, and we're gonna chase the question about the best option for VPN site-to-site tunnels today. And speaking of the VPN site-to-site tunnel, I just want to briefly talk about how site-to-site tunnel is constructed and what you need for this. I will not go into detail and explain like different IPsec modes like ESP versus AH. We're gonna be on a higher level, more of like a recommendation. And why do I pick this topic? Simply because I did my master thesis back in 2017 about exactly this topic. Because back then I was a network engineer and I configured many VPN site-to-site tunnels to third parties. And I always wondered, like, okay, what are actually the best options? Which are the options I want to pick from a security point of view and also from a performance point of view? And yeah, therefore I went into this kind of area and did my research on this one. And so, brief introduction. VPN site-to-site tunnels have two phases. First phase is the key exchange phase, pretty much. Not really the key exchange phase, but the phases where two gateways are authenticating each other, which is the phase one, where we use IKE, IKE. And we have the second phase where we pretty much establish the security associations per network, if you're doing policy-based VPN, or you have one security association for everything if you, for example, go for a route-based VPN. And we consider for the phase 2 IPsec as the protocol. And we also considered ESP as this one is this is the version where the entire package, the entire payload of the IPsec packet is encrypted and not just the headers. Okay, let's start with phase 1. In phase 1, it's pretty simple, and phase 1 and phase 2 are similar from the components point of view. Okay, let's take it a step back. Phase 1, as I already said, we have IKE as the protocol. And IKE pretty much has just two options. You have IKE version 1 and IKE version 2. Whereas version 2 is the newer version, which has less messages to be exchanged between the gateways. And it's faster and it's more secure because more features are already built in to the standard protocol of IKE 2. And for IKE 2, you have two message pairs pretty much. So you have 4 messages, and the first message pair is unencrypted, and the second message pair is encrypted already. Whereas for IKE version 1, depending on what kind of mode you're running, if it's main mode or aggressive mode, it takes, for example, for main mode, 9 messages to do the entire IKE sequence. And encryption is only established in the later packets. So why would you even use IKE version 1 if 2 does not really have any disadvantages to it? There's no performance loss, there is no security loss, there is no loss in functionality. pretty much every single gateway I've seen in the past 10 years of my career, all were capable of doing IKE version 2. So the implementation of the protocol itself is also there. Well, the reason why people do not move from IKE version 1 to IKE version 2 is they don't have to. They are not forced to. There's no compelling event which forces someone to go ahead. So you do not go and reconfigure existing VPN tunnels to third parties, for example, and just change the version from 1 to 2. It's just the overhead of coordinating two parties for this kind of change is usually seen as unnecessary. So that's why many customers or partners or service providers still use version 1 over version 2 because it's just the most common version to be used. I already mentioned it briefly, like IKE version 2 has some built-in security features. For example, that peer detection, DPD, is a built-in function of IKE version 2. Also not traversal, which is, if you take it strictly from the IKE version 1 RFC, it's like an extension. DPD and not traversal are functions which you can also use in IKE version 1, but just because the providers of the VPN gateways have implemented it beyond the RFC we have out there. And there are also several other extensions on IKE version 2, for example, to support mobile clients and multi-home clients, which is not necessarily relevant for our site-to-site VPN setup. And just for phase 1 and phase 2, now you also have to set 3 different parameters, which is the encryption algorithm, the hashing algorithm, and the key exchange algorithm. All those 3 have to be set for phase 1 and phase 2, and they are set independently from each other. So you could use in phase 1 a different set of algorithms than you use for the second phase, for IPsec, for example. It is a best practice in the industry to set the same algorithms for both, just because of minimizing human errors, pretty much. Let's talk about encryption as the first of the 3 parts. By the way, I'm not gonna talk about if you want to use a certificate, if you want to use a mutual pre-shared key to authenticate in phase 1 the gateways against each other. That's not part of this session, pretty much, because either using PSK or a certificate does not have a severe impact on both security and performance. So we're solely talking about IKE version 1 and 2 and IPsec ESP. Okay, moving back. Encryption. The standard you're gonna see across gateways is going to be AES as the encryption algorithm, which is good, but mostly the standard mode of AES is CBC, the cipher block chaining version. And most often, the gateways will not even tell you if it's CBC or not, because they just call it AES 256, and you have to look up in the documentation of the gateway that CBC is pretty much the standard version, and it's just not told on the GUI. Okay, difficult to explain for a simple fact. Okay, so pretty much standard, if the gateway says AES 256, it is most certainly the CBC mode. Then we also have a second mode, which becomes more popular finally, which is the GCM mode. The GCM mode is the Galois counter mode, and it is more secure than the CBC mode. Why is that? Because GCM is invulnerable, for example, for padding oracle attacks that, for example, have been seen in the widely discussed Poodle attack already a few years ago. So GCM up to date does not have a found vulnerability or flaw. The only thing how you can break the GCM mode is by doing brute force. So there is no padding oracle attack or other chaining methods on how you can break the encryption apart from brute force. So that's the reason why GCM is supposed or is actually more secure than CBC. And during my master thesis and my research, I found some very interesting facts which surprised me, which may also surprise you. I checked a few benchmarks, and one benchmark drew my attention the most, which was a Calomel benchmark. And on this benchmark test, they used, for example, an i7 6700. That's the reason why okay, my master thesis is already 5 years old, because this CPU is today probably considered like an old lame CPU. But back then it was a pretty good CPU. And it showed that GCM had a 99% better speed in the 256-bit version than CBC. So GCM is not only more secure, as it does not have a flaw apart from brute forcing it, it is also significantly faster than CBC. But there's a small but I have to give you here. This performance increase will only be seen on devices, gateways, for example, firewalls, which have hardware acceleration activated. For example, for the Intel proprietary setup, it is called the AES-NI. But most, especially of the VPN gateways, do have hardware accelerated encryption. Because let's face it, firewalls and VPN gateways, that's what they're doing, main part of the job, right? So you actually can take those numbers, maybe don't take it just one-to-one. Don't expect that on every single hardware or infrastructure, if ARM, if it's x64 or any other RISC processor, that it's going to be the same numbers. But it gives you a rough idea that GCM is faster, and for this CPU it was double the speed. Let's move over to hashing. Hashing is the method we use to authenticate and to validate data if it's been changed to check for the integrity, for the I part of the CIA triad. So encryption was for confidentiality, now we are for the integrity. And please don't use MD5. There are millions of hashes to clear text translations available on the internet. I think if you just look up in Google MD5 database or MD5 translation, I think they even call it sometimes decryption, which is not really correct, but it gives you the idea. MD5 is long dead. Please don't use it anymore. And SHA-2 is the version you are supposed to use. And SHA-2 gives you different options in terms of security based on the bit length you're running for the hash. So we have 128, 256, 512, and so on and so on. And pretty much the higher the bit number is, so 128 compared to 512, the better the security is for the three criteria you have for hashing, which is the collision resistance, pre-image, and second image resistance. So the higher the bit number, the better the security. But not always is a higher number also bad in terms of performance, right? So you can imagine, like, if you have a longer hash, it might be more difficult or longer to calculate it. But also here, I did some interesting findings between SHA-256 and SHA-512. And this only holds true on 64-bit processors. Because on those processors, the SHA-512, even though it had double the length, it is significantly faster than the SHA-256. I'm sorry. Okay, there's another factor that matters. So I told you, okay, it matters if it's a 64-bit processor. The second factor which matters is how long is the message. The shorter the message, the faster SHA-256 is compared to 512. But the longer the message is, it turns around. SHA-512 is faster. And it just takes, I believe the break-even point was around 40 characters for a message to just be break-even. Same speed on both. But let's face it, for VPN site-to-site tunnels, how many of those packets are super small? How many of those packets are going to be small ping packages or small DNS packets? A few of them might be. You might have heartbeats sent over, which is small size packets. But also you probably have some maybe data transfer, you have some HTTP requests where you load some services from a third party. So you would probably not end up with a lot of packets with the full packet size of maybe 1,500 byte as the MTU, but you will also end up with more than just 64 byte, for example. So somewhere in the middle is probably the real world packet size for VPN site-to-site tunnels. Of course, it depends on what kind of service you're running on this VPN tunnel. Anyway, I got carried away. Theoretically speaking, SHA-512 is 1.6 times faster per round. No, faster. Because per round, you can have double the data size on the 64-bit processor, which you could hash. So you have double the size. However, you have 25% more rounds you are going through when doing the SHA-512 compared to 256. So pretty much the theoretical speed is 2 divided by 1.25, which is 1.6. This is the theoretical speed increase of SHA-512 to 256 on a 64-bit processor. Most of the firewalls or VPN gateways you are going to see, they are running in a 64-bit mode. So this observation holds true also in the real world of networking. Let's move over to key exchange as the third part of the VPN connection. For key exchange in VPN site-to-site setups, you pretty much only have Diffie-Hellman as the algorithm to be used for key exchange. And it is usually represented by the name of the groups. So you will not see DH2048, but you would see DH group 14, for example, or DH group 19, 20, 21, 22, whatever. So this is a little difference where you have to do a little checkup on what the actual Diffie-Hellman group stands for in terms of bit security, and also if it's maybe elliptic curve or not. Based on the recommendations NIST gave, or actually give, DH14 is supposed to be acceptable. So Diffie-Hellman group 14 is considered to be acceptable. Everything below 14, especially the very common use of Diffie-Hellman group 5, is not considered secure anymore. So do not use anything below DH14. And the way you can even make the VPN tunnel more future-proof, so you don't have to reconfigure it maybe in 2 years when the DH14 becomes or is being considered unsecure, you could go ahead and maybe go for DH19, which introduces elliptic curves into the algorithm. So DH group 14 has 2048 bit and DH19 just has 256 bit, but on an elliptic curve. So you will see better security if you go higher in the DH groups pretty much. But essentially, it is a trade-off between speed and security. For Diffie-Hellman group, I unfortunately do not have a trick to it. So there is no perfect group, which is the perfect balance between performance and security. No, the higher the number in the Diffie-Hellman group, the higher the bit size is, or introduction of elliptic curve, the higher is the security, but also the higher is the computational power it requires to do. So the key exchange is actually a trade-off between security and computational power or speed. And you have to consider, does your VPN gateway only terminates 1, 2, or 3 VPN tunnels? Then shoot for the highest you can, because it will not hurt to take the higher ones. But if you are having a VPN gateway which terminates 200, 250, 300 VPN tunnels, and this gateway might be even like tightly sized for its purpose, you might want to just step it down a little bit, just go to Diffie-Hellman group 14 for the moment, or go with Diffie-Hellman group 19, and do a balance between performance and security. So there is no 100% guarantee I can give you. Not a guarantee, wrong wording here. 100% recommendation I can give you on what to use. The only thing I can do is a recommendation what not to use, which is everything below Diffie-Hellman group 14. And my personal recommendation is to go with Diffie-Hellman group 19 and higher. But as always with VPN site-to-site tunnels, especially if you are two different parties, you have to check what the other side offers from a protocol perspective. Some gateways, if you maybe have some cheaper firewalls on the other side, they might not offer the full range of the Diffie-Hellman groups from 1 to 22. They might just offer 1 to 19. Then go for 19. Okay, let's summarize pretty much what I said in the past 20 minutes. My recommendation is to use IKE version 2 for the phase 1 because there is no performance issue, but there's a security gain and future gain with using version 2 over version 1. And as I said, most firewalls have it implemented anyway. Secondly, for the encryption part, use AES-256 in the GCM mode. GCM, as I said, does not have a known vulnerability to it and is faster than CBC. So go for it. Then we have the hashing. As I showed you and mentioned to you, SHA-512 is faster if you have a real life or real world traffic mix. And it gives you more security for collision resistance, pre-image and second pre-image resistance. And lastly, as I said, DFM group 14 is fine. I personally recommend you going with 19 or higher, but look out for your performance on your own gateway and look out what the other gateway can do. And yeah, that's pretty much the recommendation I can give you. I will also link you my master thesis down below in the video description. Feel free to check through it. There are a few stats and tables which proves and demonstrate my benchmark tests. And yeah, feel free to give me any kind of feedback. And I'm happy to see you also in the next session. Thank you. Bye-bye.